Okay, so today we're going to talk about hair and making a few edits to your pen and inks, all right? Most of you have already started, and I suggested that you start working on areas that we could edit, things like hair or things like clothing, things that if we needed to make a change, we could go in and do that. I'm actually going to right now teach you a few tricks about working with hair. The biggest mistake that students make when they're doing their shading or their value work with hair is that they don't follow the form, okay? When you've got hair that curves this way, your marks should follow the exact same direction. The other thing that you should be very much looking for in your photograph is where the darker areas are, okay? Look at where the dark shadows should be. Only the very, very lightest areas in your hair, the highlights, should stay white, okay? Haphazard marks, and I can't stress this enough, where you're just making marks like this back and forth will ruin a good drawing in terms of hair. Not picking on anybody, but usually guys rush through the hair more than females do. And I think it's because females have longer hair traditionally, that's kind of stereotypical. But most students, if we look in here, most of the females have longer hair, and they kind of can see where it curves, they can see the length coming down. Whereas if a guy looks at his hair, he's kind of not sure, how do we approach this? So they just make random marks. So we'll address some of that. When we take a look at this hair, you want to start finding first the root system. If you think about hair, for example, this one, where the hair touches the scalp is usually a little bit darker. Where it curves up and the natural light in the room hits the hair, it will create a natural reflection. It's going to create that curve effect. That's where your hair highlights should go. If your hair is shorter, you're going to be looking for which pieces of hair are on top of other pieces of hair. With hair especially, it is a fantastic idea to draw out curls or major overlapping sections in pencil first. That way you have a guideline to help you. So when we're ready to start, we're obviously going to use our cover sheet because we don't want any drippage. We've already had a couple of accidents. We're going to dip our pen in. I'm going to make sure that my well of my ink pen is submerged. I'm going to clean off the back. I like to, on my cover sheet, just get my pen started a little. Tenzin, are you seeing all this, guys? Jack? Perfect. Sometimes it's a good idea when you're doing hair to turn your paper like this so that you can actually create the curve in your drawing. So I know, for example, that here is the scalp region. So I'm going to come in and have more marks here because that's going to be my shadow area. You can have a few dominant lines that guide you. This area through here is a curve, so I'm going to have a few less marks there to create a highlight. Even people with blonde hair are going to have darks in their hair, so everybody will have that. Have just a few marks going over, and you can already see that we're using the same technique that we used with fabric in terms of having the line quality, the mark, follow the form. Here, are you seeing how we're doing that? Do you see how there's a highlight in the center and then it curves here, shadow at the end, shadow over here? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? That is the essence of how you get started with your hair. When you're dealing with the face, most of you have started with your stipples. You've started, actually, some of you combining hatching and cross hatching into that. You want to continue that. I do want to stress, especially with these larger black pens and nibs, that you're very cautious when you're doing stippling like this because they will leak. Okay? If you're unsure or if you're nervous, try the brown pens for the stippling on the skin. They make a slightly smaller dot. All right? Are there questions? All right, let's get started.